What's up, Barnhill family, and welcome back to the channel.
Yo.
My goodness, Arnold Allen, the co-main event. I mean, Tom Aspinall did such a great job submitting Volkov in the first round that it's almost easy to overlook just how good Arnold Allen actually is. But Dan Hooker, I mean, he's a guy that literally only fights the best people in the world in multiple weight classes, and Arnold Allen got him out of there, which is not an easy task.
Yeah, and last night was a special night in the UK. Dana White decided to give everybody that got a finish a finishing bonus, and that's super cool. You know, that's a whole lot of money going towards those fighters. And I don't know if there was a British fighter parlay type of thing you could bet on, but man, it was pretty impressive to see just how many UK-based fighters, all the guys over there representing the UK, were able to win and just the way they were able to do it. But the one that stood out to me the most was Arnold Allen's epic first-round finish of the most competitive, most difficult person maybe anybody had to fight on that entire card, which was Dan Hooker. And, you know, when you've got a guy as good as Dan Hooker who literally beats everybody except for the absolute best people in the 155 division, and he just moves down to 145, looks like $1 million, and then is looking to, you know, kind of emerge as a top contender down there. To take that guy out in the first round is something really special. And I think people need to start realizing just how good Arnold Allen is. We have a future star, a future champion potentially on our hands. He's 9-0 in the UFC now, 9-fight, obviously, win streak. And the sky's the limit. I think there's a lot of 45ers that are going to be ignoring that UK future superstar.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. I mean, we saw Bryce Mitchell just get an excellent win over Edson Barboza. Now we see this happen with Arnold Allen over Dan Hooker. We've talked many a time on this channel about how 145 could be the toughest and most deep division in the entire UFC, and it's just continuing to get deeper. I mean, I would love to see Allen and Bryce Mitchell square off at some point. I think those are two of the hottest rising stars in 145, and I think that clash and the contrast of styles would be pretty incredible. But talking about Allen's performance last night, I mean, he was a man on a mission. Dan Hooker was not going away. We always talk about, if somebody moves down a weight class, the main talking point and center of the conversation tends to be on how their chin is going to hold up. We saw TJ Dillashaw and Cody Garbrandt both have very poor performances at 125, and everybody just attributed that to the extreme weight cut. Dan Hooker is as tough as nails, and he proved that he's just as tough at 45 as he is at 55. I mean, it took everything that Allen had to get him out of there, and Dan was still throwing until the last second.
Yeah, and he was landing. I mean, he clipped Arnold, and I for a second I was like, oh my God, is this going to be one of those crazy turnaround knockouts like Greg Hardy tied to Avasa kind of, where it was just like a slugfest, and then the one that kind of was moving forward and looked like they were on the attack gets clipped and knocked out. But Arnold was able to, you know, not let his knees buckle too bad. He got right back up, and then he just turned the gas right back on. I mean, the way he was going was not somebody that was preserving any sort of gas left in the tank for a second round. So I think he smelled some blood in the water. He saw maybe something in the demeanor or the face of Dan Hooker that showed him that he needs to turn it up and just go for the finish. And it paid off for him, because that was really one of the most impressive finishes I've ever seen. And like I said, you can't talk about a more difficult first-round finish than a fight against Dan Hooker. Dan Hooker doesn't really lose to anybody unless it's Michael Chandler, Islam Makhachev, you know, the absolute best at 155, which is known as the greatest division in the entire sport. And at this moment in time, the greatest that we've ever seen. So for him to come down to 45, I thought, okay, we're going to see him fight a couple of times, maybe get his feet wet with the weight cuts, and then he's going to be fighting for a title in no time. Well, I guess we're going to have to take that momentum and just shift it into Arnold Allen, because I think there's nobody more deserving than a top 5 ranking in the 145 division than Arnold Allen. You know, Bryce Mitchell's right there too, but these guys have just created a serious logjam, and I think they're kind of, you know, pushing the Yair Rodriguez's and the Zabits out of the topic of discussion at 145, and they're inserting themselves right down there. You know, to get Dan Hooker and Edson Barboza out of the way, now you're talking about Calvin Kattar, Volkanovski, Korean Zombie, Max Holloway, and then I would have to go
Ortega.
There. Yeah, Ortega's still there. And then after that, I'd have to put Arnold Allen in there and Bryce Mitchell as the next two guys. So the sky's the limit. I don't think they'll fight next, even though the timing would work out for them. But I think both of them deserve some of the names that I just listed there for you.
Totally. And I mean, any of those guys could beat any of the other ones on any given night. I mean, the styles are so dynamic. Giga Chikadze is another one. He just suffered a loss, obviously, but he's still in the mix. He's still very skilled. And one of those whip kicks can come around and change the night and put the lights out on any fighter in the 145 division. So I am as hype about 145 as I am about 155, maybe even more so. I just love the 145 division in the UFC. And Arnold Allen, I think, is emerging himself as a real contender. I mean, he has a finishing style that's extremely exciting to watch. He's very strong for the weight class. He punches incredibly hard. He's got a good, well-rounded skill set. I think he can present a problem for every single person that you just mentioned at 145, all the way up and including the champion Volkanovski. Not saying that I would have my money on him beating Volkanovski at this point, but I think what he showed last night showed that he is a real threat and he's a real force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, and if he goes in there and fights Calvin Kattar the way he fought Dan Hooker, he's going to have to be careful because Calvin's got some of the best boxing we've seen, but I think this power from Arnold Allen is super legit. I think he can knock anybody out at 145. And if he comes in and is able to take out somebody like Calvin, who's been shown to just be very, very difficult to get out of there, we could be seeing a future champion just waiting in the wings. I mean, what does he have to get to? 10, 12-0 before he gets his title fight? That's pretty crazy. But, you know, crazier things have happened. Khabib had a slow rise like that, and then we saw just how dominant he was. Islam Makhachev is the only other guy in the UFC with a 9-fight win streak right now, I think. So we're seeing something really special there. I think this is untapped, stardom and potential. But keep an eye out on Arnold Allen because he's coming, and I do think that he's going to keep this win train alive.
Yeah, I think so. And the one thing we have to touch on before we wrap is just Dan Hooker. What do you do with him? And it's tough to say because, like Cowboy Cerrone, everybody loves Dan. Everybody's a fan of Dan, but he's kind of demonstrating now that his role in the UFC is going to be that of a gatekeeper. He can beat anybody that's outside of the top 10 pretty handedly. He has a real hard time with the top 10, especially the top 5, and he tends to lose and get finished by the guys that are really at the top. So Dan, in his mid-30s now, has accomplished a lot. He's made a lot of money. He's had a lot of exciting performance of the night, fight of the night bonuses. What does he do from here? Because it seems like his days of trying to fight for a UFC belt are pretty much behind him.
Yeah, and, it would be weird to see him go to 170 now, right?
Right.
We just saw him do this drastic cut to 45. It seemed like 55 was the right place for him, and then I got really excited when we saw him decide to go to 45, and then he made the weight just fine. He looked really good down there. It didn't look too depleted. He looked shredded. He probably couldn't go to 144.
No.
But, 145 is okay. And I don't know. Whenever that happens, you always feel for a guy because that fresh coat of paint now just seems like maybe it's not going to pan out to be anything for him. I'd love to see him maybe try 145 one more time and see. We'll give him somebody else really tough. They're not going to give him any easy fights. Clearly, I mean, look at his resume from 2020. It's like, Dustin Poirier, Paul Felder, Islam Makhachev, Michael Chandler, Nasrat Haqparast. These types of fighters are literally the best of the best every single night that they go out there. And Dan Hooker's putting up decent fights in most of them, but the ones he's not, he tends to lose in the first round. And that's when you start to question like your role in the UFC, if you're going to get your walking papers, if you're still competitive. And the UFC has a clear path for everybody. You're either on your way to a title or you're on your way out of the business. And unfortunately, I think he's already reached the top of his mountain and it's on the way down from here. But I think Dan Hooker does have some good years of combat sports left. I just don't know exactly where that's going to be.
Maybe Edson Barbosa. He's coming off a loss as well. That's great. Both great strikers, both former 55ers. So maybe they have it out at 145.
Yeah, that would be a super fun fight.
For sure. Guys, thanks so much for watching this video. Drop us a comment. Let us know who do you think Dan should fight next, or do you think he should hang up the gloves? And what's next for Arnold Allen? We always enjoy chatting with you in the comments, and we'll see you in the next one.
Peace.